The Business of Benefits is your no BS, no sales guide to real solutions.
No gimmicks, just the truth about how to take control, transform your benefits, and care for your most valuable asset, your people.
If you're tired of the same old sales pitch and you're ready to rethink your benefits, this podcast is for you. The truth is out there. Are you ready to hear it? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Business of Benefits. I am your host, Chelsea Ryckis, and I am here today with a friend, an esteemed colleague, somebody that I've looked up to for a really long time, Lori Kleiman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chelsea. It's great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. So something I've noticed, and one of the main reasons I invited you onto the show was our KPIs, the metrics we measure for the success of our podcast. What they're telling me is that our viewers love HR specials. So we've had 2 HR specials so far this year, and they've by far outperformed all the other episodes. So I think we've got quite a few HR listeners, and I think they want to hear about HR strategy. And we do talk a lot about how to go from that sort of, manager, coordinator level up to more of a strategic level, which I know is your expertise. So we've got all the things HR to talk about today. We'll dabble in some benefits as well. But why don't you give our listeners a background on your HR background? I know you eventually sold a business, did all the things. So tell us who you are.
Yeah. So, hi, my name is Lori Kleiman, and I've been around the HR world for a very long time. I was always an HR department of one. There are a lot more of those out there than we think. In my own family business, and that was commercial photography. But thanks to I don't know where my iPhone is, but thanks to the good phones, the industry just went away with technology. And I started my own HR consulting company, and we did HR for businesses that were too small to have their own HR person. And that's the business that I grew in the basement of my house. So yes, it can be done to we had 7 employees at the end and about $1 million in sales. And I sold that to Arthur J. Gallagher, who wanted to bring it in-house. And then we started building those kinds of organizations throughout the country. But being in a big corporation just was not my thing. And so I started my own HR consulting again in 2013. And now I pretty much do training and helping people get certified in human resources. A lot of my time today is spent giving back, and I love it. So, yeah.
You are very much a sought-after speaker. You speak on some of the largest stages in the country. I actually think SHRM-Annual is the largest HR stage, maybe even in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been doing that since 2014, and I love it.
So the first question that came to mind when you were talking about your background, and you said one of the reasons you started your own consulting HR firm originally was because you wanted to be able to serve the employers that couldn't maybe afford an HR salary at that point. What size business do you normally see? Like, is it number of employees? Is it revenue? Is it number of years in business where they kind of get to that point where like they might actually need these fractional services?
Yeah, definitely. It's actually a great question, because for almost all other sales, except maybe benefits, but it always goes by revenue of the business. And the truth is, it really, for HR, it's all about number of people that need services, number of people asking questions, all that. So for the fractional services, I've had clients all the way down to 15 employees. It typically has to do with expertise of the leadership team and how independent your employees are. But starting these days, it's really as low as probably 50 that people are looking to bring someone in-house. And what's been fascinating, Chelsea, to me in the last 3 or 4 years, I thought all the technology we would be adding would make it less important for an HR person, and it has become so much more important. The technology is causing so many employee questions. You expect the technology to speak seamlessly to your payroll system, And there are always questions and glitches. So I'm seeing more and more HR departments of one that may only service 30, 50, 60 employees. And the compliance has gotten so complex. If any of our listeners operate in multiple states, you need an HR person that much sooner, because there's just what's happening at the state level is insane for human resources.
I think about it all the time from obviously the benefits perspective, right? Because that's my wheelhouse, and most of our clients are going to be mid to large market employers, multi-state, uh, all the crazy California, New York, Oregon type groups where it's like, they've got the weirdest disability or state disability plans or whatever it is. It's always different. It's always fun to figure out. And I'm only looking at it through this one lens. And although I will say, our business has grown a lot over the last 5-6 years. And so I now have employees all over the country as well. And it's so interesting, the different state rules, the way that my handbook has to be. So I'm not obviously hundreds of employees, but I've had a glimpse into just how intense that is and how overwhelming it can be when you are that HR department of one, because it's me.
Yeah.
But so like, what advice would you give to employers? And we'll kind of speak to some of the smaller ones right now. And then I'd love to switch gears to, the HR manager or the HR, and they're trying to get to that strategy role. But these smaller companies that, are really wanting to figure out the HR thing, and they're like, do I bring somebody in? And if I do, like, what are the things that somebody at that level needs to be able to do? Because I think there's a disconnect sometimes between like strategy and tactical. And like some of these smaller companies, like you really need tactical HR as opposed to like big strategic HR. The strategic HR costs way more money, and they're not going to do the day-to-day lower level tasks, right? So how do they differentiate and make that decision?
So when you are at around 50 employees, you don't need a lot of strategy. I mean, I'm going through something right now where we are updating performance review forms. And the COO of this company with 35 employees has hired an expensive consultant to go through, and we are now creating 5 different documents, one for every level of the organization, and we are wordsmithing this to death. Your employees don't care. That's meaningful when you've got 5,000 employees in 42 states, and your managers, you've got to make sure that you're level setting things across the organization. But when you have 35 or 40 employees, you know who's doing their job and who's not. You don't you don't need this ridiculous. So in the smaller organizations, and you brought up such a good point. Years ago, I was consulting for a business, and I had my number 2 was their main consultant, and the CEO, we were bringing a second person in to work with her. And the CEO of the business said, I don't want a second person. I want Sandra doing all the work. And I said, look, what you need today is copies of employee files made, enrolling people in benefits. This was before the old employee navigator and all that. You need payroll checked. He goes, I know, that's what Sandra does so well. I said, but she doesn't want to do it anymore. People, so in a smaller business, you are looking for somebody with 3 to 7 years experience, somebody who might want that seat at the table to listen and learn, but knows that they aren't going to be going to the SHRM annual conference and bringing back 42 ideas for new things you can do. What I do encourage your listeners to look for is somebody who is certified. in HR, because that lets you know that you know the basics, that they know the basics. And in a simple interview, especially if you're not an HR professional yourself, you don't really know what to ask and what to look for. So if you look for somebody who has either their PHR or their SHRM-CP, those are both what we call the generalist level. Those are the right people to bring in to a smaller organization who will have some thoughtful strategic ideas, but won't expect to come in and do, turn your business around.
Right. And then have a salary that corresponds to that level of impact.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So that's awesome. Thank you. And then do you have any insights into those, how much those certifications cost for people that are listening that might be interested in looking into them?
So I like to tell people to have a budget around $1,500. These days, though, and I will tell you, I teach a test prep class. So many people online are honestly just preparing with ChatGPT for free. So the test itself costs between $400 and $500, depending on which test you take. There are prep classes, everything from there are tons of free resources. There are great books on Amazon. I actually wrote a little, I hate to even call it a book, but for $9, it's test taking tips that you can get on Amazon. But a lot of people online are saying they're just prepping with ChatGPT. So it really depends what you come to the table with. And there are great resources. If anybody wants to email me, or I think we gave the information in the notes for the show, there's a great resource called ExamEdge. And Chelsea, for your benefits listeners who might be taking some of the benefits exams, ExamEdge has practice tests for every kind of certification. So they've got the HR test, but they would for sure have the insurance tests, I'm sure. They have nursing tests. They have anyone going for a certification, and that's almost everyone these days is going for a certification. I always, when people ask me what should I do to prepare, I tell them go out to ExamEdge, take one sample test. They're like $18. It's not a big deal. And then let's talk. Because depending, you may need something as comprehensive as the SHRM learning system, but that is very expensive. And most people getting ready to certify don't need it. So I think ExamEdge is a great resource. It's just examedge.com for people listening.
That's awesome. I had absolutely no idea.
Yeah, look and see if they have the insurance tests.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
And I know that there's, we had, this episode hasn't aired yet, but it will likely air before this one. We had the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans on our show as well. And they've got a couple designations and certifications. So I'd be interested to see if those are on the ExamEdge, because I think a lot of people are taking those. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet they are. It's a great resource.
I speak with a lot of HR, and I love HR, and I'm really, really drawn to like the human impact that they make and all the things. Sometimes I see that there's like this really interesting disconnect, right? Kind of like I alluded to earlier, between just like tactical HR business partner, HR manager, with like strategic HR driving ROI, making it, not a cost center, but like something that's really adding financial value to the business, data driven, that type of thing. I think the biggest question I have for you is, and I feel really bad because a lot of the times there's people in more of this manager level that haven't been given the skill set or the training or the opportunity to really like up level. Therefore, they're not given a seat at the table. They're not included in really big decisions that they ultimately have to, bring to reality every single day. And I see it all the time. But I will say, the best organizations that I work with and the best cultures and all of that, that doesn't exist. Like there's a very clear HR is at the table. HR truly is the voice of the people. They have a say in everything. What do you think is the biggest differentiator between the people that are stuck here and the strategic HRs that get to be heard?
You know, there are a lot of things depending on the organization, of course, and the person. But let me unpack a couple. One is quite simply, what is the leadership at your organization interested in doing? And sometimes you just have to make a change. I don't like to encourage people to get a master's degree and do this and do that. And then all of a sudden they're going to let you participate at that level.
Yeah, no, that's not actually what happens. But people really do think that if I
Yeah,
get this certification, if I spend
right.
this money.
So I would start by being reflective and asking for a meeting with your president or CEO. And just say, what are your goals for HR? Because these are my goals. And I can see that if I start participating at the level you described, I can add value. I can add pit. Do you have the capacity for that? Is that something you're interested in us exploring together? And if they say, no, I'm all about my product, I'm all about, operations, I'm all about sales, I really am just looking for you to do what you do great every day, then decide. But I also like to acknowledge that in HR, we have a lot of people, and I will say women because the field SHRM data shows it's about 83% female. So it is a female dominated field. And there are a lot of people. And so I acknowledge you on this podcast. If you are taking care of children, if you are taking care of your parents, if you are sitting in the middle of this and your spouse also has a job and the laundry needs to get done and the groceries needs to get picked up, and you are really happy being an HR generalist or an HR manager, you don't need to move up. I say that to leaders all the time who say, I need a career path for my HR person. I said, well, have you asked if they want one? If you ask, because there are a lot of people in HR that love their job, love their employees, and are doing what they want to be doing. So you are acknowledged. But for those of you who do want that path that Chelsea described, it's about standing up and being seen, number one. So many HR people I know wait for the invitation. When I present, I have a slide that says you're invited with a calendar, and then I put a big XO. It ain't gonna happen. If
Yeah.
you are not invited today, they're not going to think of you, but it doesn't mean you're not welcome. It just means they haven't thought of it. So go to whoever runs those meetings and say, I would like to participate on Tuesday around this topic. Don't just sit on your you know what. Go with good data that's relevant to the entire business and ask for the floor, because they will all start looking at each other and be like, oh my, why didn't we think of this before?
Yeah, and why haven't we invited you in the
Preview.
past? So one of the questions I have for you is, and maybe this is just I'm, too narrow focused and I'm too in my lane, but I see healthcare and specifically benefits decision making as the opportunity for an HR to really because that is a number 2 or 3 expense for a business. And generally it's unmanaged, it's uncontrolled, I know you and I have talked about it before. These HR and these businesses feel like they're at the mercy of insurance companies. But the truth is, that's actually not the truth. It's just that we're trapped in this cycle and you just got to get out of the cycle. So imagine if an HR came to the table, the C suite, with a solution to get, 30% savings on medical and carry that out over 5 to 10 years. And oh, by the way, our employees can have free cancer treatments and free imaging and free specialty drugs. And this doesn't have to be this awful thing that we hate every single year. Why do you think that because I see a ton of fear around being the person in the organization that brings this change or brings this new idea to the table? Why do you think, like, if they want, of course, we're only talking about the ones that want to really take that leap, right? If they want that, what do you think is holding HR back from being the drivers of this change? Because I feel like they're very protective of the status quo sometimes.
I do. There is a piece to be acknowledged of HR people often feel so overwhelmed day to day because it's the first place where they have their teams cut. There's the first place. And so I ask the listeners to reflect on, does it just feel like one more thing you don't want to take on? Which it might be. But I'm going to pair it back, Chelsea, something that you said to my membership group that I was completely unaware of, and all 160 of them were unaware. Well, let's say 140 out of 160.
Right.
So many of our business's broker is the owner's best friend, the owner's cousin. They've had this same broker for 25 years. They get all sorts of perks from this broker. I had no idea until you educated us that there is a fiduciary responsibility to be looking at some of these things. And our broker this year did send some report. We didn't even know what they were until we heard your presentation. So I think for those of you who want to step up and be seen, that, you are right, is a perfect presentation, not even to talk about changing benefits, changing broker, blah, 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 but to say, I'd like to do a 15-minute program on our responsibilities around insurance. And because of that, we are now, there's two companies that I do consulting for, and we're inviting you in to be, because we've had the same broker for 11 years at this company. We've never evaluated them. And so even before you talk about, changing benefits is just like anything else of change management. And step one is helping people understand why change even should be considered. And so that to me would be the number one place, and let me throw something back at you, Chelsea, although I know you have something you wanted to add in. So add that in, and then I'll throw this to you in a minute.
Yeah, don't forget it.
I'm writing it down.
Okay, good. I think that this is a really cool story, and it's actually about one of your members. So like Lori mentioned, I spoke on HR fiduciary duty and health plans to her membership group, which at the end of the episode, we'll share with you how to get involved with that, because you absolutely should. It's super affordable and accessible. I love your model for it. So a couple months ago, I spoke on basically the hidden liability that a lot of HRs don't know about, which is not only are you a fiduciary in your 401k, plot twist, you are in your health plan too. And even if you're not the one making decisions, but you are involved in it, you can be personally named in these lawsuits that are coming down market, hitting smaller employers, mid-market employers. So there was one of your members, a few of them actually had reached out after. They were super excited. They were taking advantage of the free templates and all the things. And you're right, they hadn't heard any of this. One member specifically, she was so cute. She sent this email and she was like, my mind is absolutely blown. Like, I cannot believe that this, like, we have a fiduciary responsibility. We've never looked at it. Like, we had absolutely no idea. We didn't even know that there was something we could do about healthcare. So she's like, but she was in one of these lower HR roles, right? Not the HR director. So over the next couple months, she very artfully just sort of slipped things in to her managers about fiduciary duty, and she gave them the templates and she gave them this. And then when she felt like they were ready, she sent them the recording from our talk. They watched it about a week or two ago, and now we have a full meeting with the whole C-suite the first week of August to talk about basically their healthcare strategy and putting a fiduciary component into it. And, whether or not they end up working with me, like, that's not the point. The point is just that we can make better decisions that are going to impact the hundreds of people that we serve, right? So I think that's really cool, because it's that person that was like, had she gone right away to the top and been like, I saw this and blah, blah, it would have freaked everybody out. It would have been overwhelming because there is a broker, owner friendship thing going on. But it was this slow education, slowly adding value. And then now we're going to get to educate all 5 of them in August, which is so cool.
Yeah, and that's, I have a good friend who's a change management expert, and I've learned so much from her because I'm like a bull in a china shop. And I would typically just walk in and say, this is something we really need to be doing. And so, but getting people on board slowly is great. And that's exciting. Offline, we'll talk about who that was because I'm excited for you. But back to the thing that so you sort of asked me why HRs don't, take this on as something they want to change. And what I throw back at you and the insurance industry is that I feel like by the time we get our renewals, it's too late to make thoughtful decisions. And everybody just ends up saying, well, what the hell, let's just renew.
And we'll figure it out next year.
Right. And, I've had, there's another organization we're also bringing you into, and we feel like, well, we're not even going to know till November whether we want to keep the same or not. And then we have to do open enrollment. We have to create a booklet. We have to set up Employee Navigator. I don't have time to move from United Healthcare to Aetna or from Blue Cross and every year, and this has been, look, listeners, I've been in HR since the 80s. Half of you weren't even born yet. This has been every year since then. If I'm going to make a change because of what I saw at Renewal, I literally have to empty every other project for 3 weeks.
Absolutely. So I have a couple things for that. So number one is, and this is something that I'll just speak super transparently, I hate this about the insurance industry. There is actually a tactic that brokers and insurance companies use, and it's essentially to stall, and we call it, I don't actually do this, but holding the renewal. So the renewal might come out from carrier A, right? And it comes out 90, maybe 100 days before the effective date, which can be enough time. I want to add a caveat that once we take over a plan, we write into every single contract that the renewal needs to be dropped. We need a pre-renewal, kind of like a glimpse at 180, and at 120, we want the actual renewal. That gives us way more time.
Do they do that?
Yes, you can do that. So yeah, and
never gotten one more than 60 days in advance.
See, and that's the tactic. So what's happening is, depending on the program, depending on the state, it's probably being dropped, especially if it's fully insured and it's with a large carrier. It's probably being dropped at the 90-day mark, but the employer isn't getting it. It's going directly to the broker. So the broker sees it, and the broker's going to look at it. I literally had a conversation with a broker that wants to learn how to do more of the custom health plans that we do, and more of the like the longer term strategies the other day. And he was picking my brain, and I was like, so how are you handling your renewals right now? And he's like, well, we get our fully insured renewals at 90 days. He literally said, if it's above 15%, then we're going to go to market. If it's below 15%, we convince the employers that that's a good year and that they should just eat it. He's like, or we'll increase the deductibles a little bit, get it closer to that 10 or single digit. He's like, if I can get to a single digit, nobody questions me, and then we can just move on. And I'm sitting there like, my face is like, he's like, I'm taking it. That's not your strategy. And I was like, no, we literally do the opposite, but it's okay. I'm not judging. Like, So that's the strategy. It's hold on to it. Don't give a copy to the employer, because guess what happens if the employer does not have a copy of the renewal? They can't market with anybody else. Like, I couldn't come in and be like, hey, let me give you a proposal that's firm, meaning real hard numbers, without a copy of the renewal from the carrier. So they hold on to it. They waste 15 to 30 days. If we get it at 90, that's why you're getting stuff around 60, is because they've negotiated, they went out to market, they did all this, these BS tactics of stalling. And now they're coming to you with what they think is a more acceptable number at that 60-day mark. At that 60-day mark, I completely agree. Who in their right mind wants to entertain a new broker conversation, nonetheless, not even a new carrier conversation? So that's the tactic I would highly recommend to anybody listening. If you are finding yourself in this cycle, that you put your broker and carrier on notice and say, at no later than 90 days. I would actually ask for 120, because they probably won't give it to you. And then they'll settle at 90, as opposed if you ask for 90, they might be like 75. So ask for that and put them on notice and say, we're not playing the same game next year. Like, we're just not doing it. So that's number one. And then remember that you can write into contracts different drops of renewal dates in the future. Number two, I really highly recommend that HR consider your insurance program as one decision, right? Like carriers, benefit designs, contributions, compliance, all of that. That's one decision. A separate decision is who you want to manage that for you. Too often, we end up in that 90-day window, and companies are having to choose all these insurance decisions and then also having to choose a broker, and it's way too overwhelming. So what I've seen work really well, and we've done it twice already in the last 2 weeks, we have groups that are renewing 1/1. They just became clients. We're taking over 8/1. And we don't even have the renewal yet. All we know is that they've been in this cycle for 5-6 years, and they're over it. They want to try something new. So what we're doing in the meantime, we take over 8/1. We've already put the carriers on notice that, like, you are not playing this renewal game with us. We don't play this game. So either give it to us now, or we're going to move off cycle and you don't even have a chance at the business, which is a whole other conversation. And we're focused on employee communications, building and doing compliance audits and fiduciary committees and all these things that we can do in the interim. So as soon as that renewal drops, it's go time. That works really well. So don't think that you have to make all of these decisions in these 60 days. Like, peel it apart, interview some brokers in the middle of the year, right? What are their capabilities? Do they have a real plan, or are they reacting to the market like 90% of the people out there?
Right.
Really long answer, but.
No, and a million important points, especially separating the two, because, you want the broker that you trust and feel is working in your best interest, as opposed to, the carriers these days, look, depending on your state, you're either going to be with the Blues, United Healthcare, Aetna, or Cigna. There are creative alternative options, but for most of us, that's where we end up. So you're really looking for a partner when you're picking your broker.
Because, one broker could, or let's say you have 2 or 3 brokers, right? And they all bring you the same proposals from those 3 or 4 players. And then add in your regional considerations like Kaiser in California and whatever regional game we got going on. So that's very much the traditional model. Even in that model, if you're a company that's like, I don't care to get creative, I just want to stay in this bubble that I know, that's fine. Guess what we can do there? We can negotiate better renewal dates. We can negotiate access to data. We can negotiate into contracts the ability to audit claims. And then, there's so many things that we can do even in that model from a contract perspective that will impact employee experience. You can do employee engagement. You can do text messaging. You can reach out to dependents. There's a whole program that we're implementing for these 8/1 groups. And remember, their renewal date is January 1st, but starting 8/1, we put in a financial assistance program. We're looking at every single hospital claim. So anybody that went to the hospital in the last 12 months that makes under $75,000 that could basically get their out-of-pocket waived through nonprofit financial assistance programs. So there's all sorts of things you can do to actually add value to employees, right? Without needing to go down the self-funding path if that's something that's scary and, not in the cards this year or whatever. You can still do a lot within that traditional model.
Well, and that's why the organization that I do consult, I only do a tad of consulting anymore. But the reason we're having you in is because after your program, we really realized that our current broker is totally phoning it in. I mean, he's been our broker for so long. He hasn't come up with or provided one creative idea till since going to a digital benefit book. I mean, there's just, and the things you're talking about aren't hard. They're not hard for HR to implement. You do most of the work. You've got it all figured out on the back end, so it's pretty turnkey. And, sometimes you just need to shake it up for the purposes of shaking it up a little bit.
And what I always say is, at the very least, if you entertain some of these conversations, maybe it's not the year for other business reasons, right? There's hiring and firing and there's growth, or maybe you're taking on money, whatever is going on. Maybe this isn't the year to make a change, but at least and leverage that information. Like, for example, we do a lot of benchmarking of compensation. Like, how much is your broker making? Have they disclosed that to you? Because again, that is law since 2021. And not only, the commission or the fee, but the indirect, the bonuses, the trips, the steak dinners, like those things, right? When we benchmark the compensation, a lot of the times they'll be like kind of mind blown because they've been in the same program for 10 years. They've never really been showed anything creative, and their broker's making, 50% more than the average in that region. And it's kind of like, that sucks, and it's not to say that that anybody's bad, right? And I will say, traditional brokers, like, it hasn't been their fault. The system is working exactly as it was designed. And it's designed that everybody makes more when employers pay more, right? But we're at this turning point now with legislation like the Consolidated Appropriations Act and just this push for transparency, where it's like, you really have to start learning some of this stuff. And the fiduciary part, you really got to start learning some of this stuff for your clients so that they don't end up with a lawsuit, so they can serve their employees best, right? Like, sure, your business model needs to change a little bit, but just figure it out. Like, that's life. Things evolve, right? Like, adapt. But too many of them are just kind of like, maybe they only have 5-10 years left in their business, and they know, it's probably going to take 5 or 10 years for the way that I do business to become the norm. So why not just ride the wave?
Right.
So super interesting.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And as you said, this is a place where HR people can make their mark to educate and be strategic, even in a very small organization, because the leaders in your company aren't paying attention to this. So it's a place you can really demonstrate expertise by bringing this to the table.
So can you we're getting to the end of our episode here, but can you tell all of our listeners about HR topics, what you do with that, just the value of it? Because I've obviously had the pleasure of speaking to a lot of HR and especially like groups across the country, and you have something really special going on.
So I'm at a place, you all at the beginning heard about my sort of HR journey. And now I'm at a place in my career where I'm fortunate enough really to be giving back. And that's really what it's all about for me. So what I do now is work directly with HR professionals, helping them level up their game, helping them not feel so alone in the world. And I do it through a couple of different ways. We have the HR membership group that we've talked about. Very affordable, $19 a month, but it's a great community of people. I do the certification prep classes at what I think is an affordable rate, to get people certified. And then a lot of what I do is out there in the community. I'm very involved. How Chelsea and I first met was through HR Florida. I am the program chair for what is the largest state conference in the country. It's just amazing and we love it. And that's purely a volunteer position, but it's how I engage with HR people. I do a lot of speaking at HR conferences. I speak at HR National every year. Those of you that have SHRM chapters, I'm happy to speak to your SHRM chapter. And then I've created some really fun books on Amazon. The one I love the most is, Chelsea, I probably haven't sent it to you. I will.
No, I want
Or
it,
I'll
though.
give it to you next month. It's called HR Stress Buster. And it's a coloring and activity book for HR people.
Oh, that's so good.
So now I'm fortunate enough to do things that I really enjoy, engage with the people I love being engaged with, and do it. I do still have to, it is a business, so I have to cover costs, but, it's pretty much about just happily engaging with the HR community that I love.
That is definitely the differentiator that I noticed in the group, because there was no pressure, there was no obligation. Like it was just very light, informative, and then there was like this, kind of like, and this sounds really woo woo, but like nurturing, like loving capacity. Like you can tell, like you are truly in it, and like you are aligned, and you are in that phase of giving back. And to be, just to see it is so exciting, because I can't wait to get there. Although I do feel like a lot of the work I'm doing is educating and giving back in that way.
Right.
But, I'm obviously still running a business and still very young. So it's like so cool to see, like, you work really hard, and then you can get to this point in your life where like you're aligned and you're giving back and you're pouring into others. And it's just really beautiful. So thank you for what you do to support all of us. Where can our listeners find you?
So the best is just hrtopics, all one word.com is the company website.
All right, listeners, for the business of benefits, you heard it, hrtopics.com. Lori is also on LinkedIn. We'll have all her contact information in the show notes. And thank you. This was such a fun HR special. And I feel like we really did dabble a lot more into benefits than I thought. So thank you. Sorry if I pushed you down that road.
Well, no, it's a lot of our world, Chelsea. There's a reason you and I have connected, right? It's a lot of what we do. So
Awesome.
It was great to be with you. Thanks for making it so easy.
Talk soon.
Bye.